Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. My name is Maddie Valencia, and I'm a Director of Development at the OHSU Foundation. On behalf of the Foundation team, we are honored to present today's discussion, Treating Multiple Sclerosis with a Breakthrough Drug, featuring Laura Wyden, a philanthropist and OHSU patient, and Dr. Dennis Bourdet, Professor Emeritus of Neurology at the OHSU School of Medicine. Multiple sclerosis affects more than 2 million people worldwide, and, like most disorders that impact the brain and central nervous system, care begins at diagnosis and lasts a lifetime. There is currently no cure for MS, but today we are going to hear about how OHSU is on the front lines of attacking MS and changing the way we can treat MS, thanks to the power of collaboration and philanthropy. Before we begin our conversation, I am going to quickly go through some housekeeping items on how you can best engage with us. We will be using the chat function, which can be found to the right of your viewing screen. In order to participate in the chat, you can log in via your Vimeo or Facebook account, or participate as a chat box guest by selecting the Chat as a Guest blue link. If you need assistance at any time during the live streamed presentation, please email fdnevents@ohsu.edu. We are now going to copy that into the chat box for your reference. Please note today's presentation will be recorded and available for viewing on the OHSU Foundation website in the near future. We will also email a link to that video once the recording is available. And with that, it is my great privilege to begin our conversation today with Laura Wyden and Dr. Dennis Bourdet. Laura, you have been on an incredible journey. Can you share with us your story, and what does it feel like to have MS?
What does it feel like to have MS? Do you remember in Back to the Future when Marty McFly's family slowly started disappearing from the picture? It kind of feels like my limbs and my body become invisible and just turn useless. I was 19 when my first symptoms began and 24 when I was first diagnosed. The heaviness started in my right leg and I began to fall consistently. I progressed from a cane to a Segway to a scooter over the next 10 years. And in the middle of all of that, we wanted a family and saw no reason not to throw our cards in, and surprisingly, rather quickly adopted a beautiful baby boy in 2006. Now, navigating motherhood on a Segway put our creativity to work. I would put the baby's Moses basket on top of a cafeteria dish cart and put the diapers underneath and push the cart wherever I needed, get off the Segway and be able to care for him. We adapted to each loss of every symptom over and over. Eventually, my car was equipped with hand controls, bathrooms were all remodeled, and yet MS kept showing up. With the physical setbacks, there's emotional ones too. The frustration of getting stuck in the bathroom and not being able to stand up, wanting to play with my family just like other moms.
Laura, how you have adapted to overcome these struggles is inspiring. How do you stay strong and persevere when it seems like you have so much stacked against you?
Look, I am so fortunate in so many ways. I have an amazing supportive husband, friends and family who have my back, and the greatest 13-year-old boy that I just adore. This is how my story goes. There are struggles, but it doesn't serve me to feed them.
Laura, thank you so much for your honesty and for sharing with us what it's like to have MS, your struggles, and your perseverance. Dennis, I'd love to hear from you about the biology of MS. Can you tell us about what's happening in Laura's body and in others who have MS?
Well, multiple sclerosis is a disease of the brain and the spinal cord. And for most people, it starts off by having episodes or attacks or relapses where a new problem develops. The person struggles with it and then it slowly improves. And often early on, a person goes back to normal. These attacks or relapses are caused by white blood cells going into the brain and spinal cord and attacking part of it. And it's particularly attacking the insulating material of the brain. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, nerve cells communicate with each other by long processes called axons which you can think of as an electrical wire. And those electrical wires are covered with a fatty substance called myelin. And it's the myelin that gets attacked and destroyed in multiple sclerosis in bits and pieces. And over time, more and more damage occurs, and eventually a person develops permanent symptoms that don't go away. Now, many people with relapsing MS, after they've had it for 5, 10, 15 years, enter a different phase of MS where they get progressively worse. Some people even start off with a progressive MS from day one. And in this circumstance, the person's getting worse year to year, and as Laura was describing, requires them to adapt to changes as they occur. Now, we now have treatments for relapsing MS, the early phase of the disease. The first one of these treatments became available in late 1993, and today we have over 20 FDA-approved drugs for treating relapsing MS. Unfortunately, we don't have any treatments for progressive MS. And moreover, we don't have anything that promotes repair of the myelin, which we would call remyelination. So the big challenges facing us today for treating people with MS is how do we treat progressive MS, and how do we promote repair?
Thank you, Dennis. Now, can you tell us more about how OHSU has been able to move the needle in developing further treatment options?
We've had a particular interest in addressing the problems of people with progressive MS. And about 4 years ago, I began to collaborate with a scientist at OHSU, Dr. Thomas Scanlon, to develop a drug to promote remyelination, repair of that insulating material that gets damaged in MS. We wanted to do that because if we could promote repair, it would have two effects. One is it would help to improve a person's symptoms, which would be great. But we also believe that it would slow or stop progressive MS because the myelin acts as a protective shield, if you will, and prevents the progressive deterioration of axons, which is what drives progressive MS. So we very much wanted to create a therapy that would promote remyelination. Dr. Scanlon had invented a drug for another purpose called sobitrione, and he believed, based on work that had been done in tissue culture, that this drug would promote remyelination. Just as an aside, this drug mimics some features of thyroid hormone, and it's been known for many, many years that thyroid hormone is critical to the development of myelin, and in animal models could promote remyelination. The problem is you can't give high doses of thyroid hormone to people because they develop heart problems and other significant side effects. His drug had the potential to stimulate remyelination, but not cause any of the side effects of thyroid hormone. So we were very excited about that. But we had a problem. The problem was the drug didn't get into the brain very well, and that's where the action is. You had to get the drug into the brain to stimulate the cells that form myelin to create remyelination. So Dr. Scanlon had a whole plan of developing different forms of the sobitrione, related drugs that could get into the brain very effectively and do the job that we wanted it to do. But this was going to require a lot of money and time and resources. And initially we sought support from traditional sources, the NIH, the Department of Veterans Affairs, even the National MS Society. But we were unable to get grants approved because the reviewers thought that this was too high risk. They didn't believe we'd be able to do what we wanted to do. That's where Dan Wyden and Laura Whiten stepped in. I had been working with them for a number of years on pilot studies funded by the Laura Fund, which was created by a gift from the Whiten family. And I presented to Dan and Laura what we had accomplished thus far with developing a remyelination drug, but indicated that it was going to take us a long time to do it without a substantial investment. And they believed in what we were doing, were excited about what we were doing, and made a commitment to fund the research. And we were then able to very rapid from a scientist standpoint, Laura might comment on from a patient standpoint, but we were able to move this whole research program forward so that at the end of 4 years, we had a panel of drugs that were very effective at getting into the brain and stimulating remyelination in animal models. And OHSU was able to apply for a patent for those drugs and then licensed that patent to a biotechnology company, which is now in the process of developing the lead drug as a treatment for multiple sclerosis.
That's really exciting, Dennis. Thank you. Laura, it sounds like your family was instrumental in funding key research options. Can you tell us more about how and when the Laura Fund started?
Yeah, the Laura Fund was founded by my parents, Dan and Bonnie Whiten, in 2004. The idea stemmed that for Christmas we would give out instead of giving in, and Dad takes this very seriously. I was given a blank page book entitled The Laura Fund, and on the inside it said, a research innovation fund for multiple sclerosis. This will allow OHSU to invest novel, high-risk ideas that they would not otherwise have the resources to pursue. It will encourage the MS research team to think more creatively about a cure for this disease, knowing financial support can be available. So Dr. Burdett was my neurologist at OHSU, and we gave him the reins to put this objective in motion. We would casually meet with Dr. Burdett and researchers at Blue Hour or sometimes just right outside Dad's office discussing projects to fund, how scientists do or do not work together, the difference between patient time and research time, in which Dad always exclaimed, "What's taking so long?" We would go over the ins and outs of mitochondria and the workings of remyelination before diving into these hunches and concepts that might have untapped opportunities. When Dr. Burdett and Dr. Tom Scanlon approached us with the perfect high-risk novel new approach, we were all in. Let's do this.
Without their support, we would not be where we are today. We would not have a drug in hand that got into the brain well and promoted remyelination. So this research was going to have gone nowhere without their support.
Dennis, was this just a one-time donation to the Laura Fund, or were there ongoing gifts to the Laura Fund?
Well, the gift from the Whiten family was actually given in stages over 2 years. And it was based upon our hitting certain milestones and demonstrating success. So it wasn't like we were just given a large pot of money, but there were expectations reasonably attached to it. I should mention also that because of the Whiten's gift and our making progress, it inspired other families locally to make significant donations that also helped the project forward and were also important to the advancing of this research. I will say that after we obtained a lot of data based on the gifts that the Whitens made, we were able to get support from the National MS Society for the research, but that was only after we had done an awful lot of work. Now, where we are right now with regards to the drug is that a biotechnology company has licensed the rights to the drug. The company's called Autobahn Therapeutics, and they spent a year replicating what we had done, because before millions and millions of dollars were invested in the development of the drug, they had to make sure that what we said about the drug was correct. And they were able to pretty rapidly replicate everything that we had already done previously. So they just recently were able to raise $76 million for the development of this drug. And that's enough money for them to do all the animal testing and drug synthesis needed for the FDA to approve testing it in humans, then doing a small trial to determine what the proper dose is to give the people, and also to make sure that it's safe, and enough money to move on to the next phase of drug development, in which a larger number of people with MS receive the drug, and we do measurements to determine whether or not it's stimulating remyelination. So this has gone really pretty quickly for drug development. And I just have to say that there are many drugs that get invented in the laboratory that don't leave the laboratory. And all along, the plan was to create a drug that we'd be able to move out of the laboratory, have a biotechnology company pick it up and develop it. And this has all come to fruition. Laura alluded to Dan's plea every time we would meet was, what's taking so long? He saw the importance of staying on target and not getting distracted by obscure scientific questions, and keeping our eyes set on the goal, which was to accomplish the development of a drug and getting it into a biotechnology company for development. And I may have had the reins, Laura, but your father had the whip that kept us moving forward quickly. And you provided an inspiration to all of the scientists that were working on this project, because you were a living example of what we were trying to conquer.
Oh, thank you.
Dennis, what's your vision for the future?
Well, we're continuing with funding projects with the Laura Fund. The initial notion behind the Laura Fund was we would do pilot studies, and Dan in particular wanted us to invest in novel ideas that couldn't get funding otherwise, in out-of-the-box thinking. He said that it was important that we dare to fail. He didn't expect everything that we invested in would lead to where we are now with the remyelination drug. And we've followed that, and we've invested in a number of things that didn't work out quite as well as the remyelination drug, but opened up new possibilities. I'm still committed to furthering development of treatments for progressive MS. We're very optimistic about the remyelination drug, but there are other issues that are important to progressive MS. For instance, there are inflammatory cells in the brain in progressive MS that's contributing to the destruction of the nerve fibers. We're also funding a novel approach that we think will also be useful for remyelination, and that is aerobic exercise. In animals, aerobic exercise will stimulate remyelination in models of demyelination. And we believe the same thing might occur in people with MS. And so we're actually doing a formal study looking at aerobic exercise and using electrophysiological means of determining whether it's stimulating remyelination or other forms of repair. So that's a project that's being funded in part by the Laura Fund. And we're also using funds to do a pilot study of antioxidants, which we think may benefit this inflammatory process that's going on in progressive MS. So I'm terms of the view for the futures, I'm very optimistic that the remyelination drug will prove to be effective. And I'm also very optimistic that by taking new approaches, we'll be able to come up with effective treatments for progressive MS.
Dennis, that all sounds incredibly promising, and I'm excited to hear how the development for a remyelination drug and the LAURA Fund has really served as a launching pad for additional exciting research treatment options for MS. Laura, what about you? What gives you hope?
This drug probably won't help me, but its impact on the MS community and beyond is huge, enormous. And that's kind of what gives me hope, that there'll be a story for all these new people that have MS, an easier story. And you know, Dad always pushes the boundaries, and just keep exploring. That's what gives me hope.
Laura and Dennis, thank you as well so much for your time today and for sharing with us your stories and your work. With that, I would now like to open our Q&A portion of this virtual event. As a reminder, you can engage with us via the chat box feature to the right of your screen. Our chat box moderators are also standing by to assist. During the registration process, we received multiple questions, and I want to address some of those. Dennis, you told us a little bit about the clinical trials. Can you speak more to the timeline of it, though?
So the development of a drug that will get FDA approved for purpose is a bit complicated. There's a pre-clinical phase. That's where the Audubon Therapeutics is right now, where you have the drug synthesized in a special factory that practices good manufacturing practices. And you take that drug and then test it in animals to make sure it's not toxic in animals. And once you gather that data, which can take anywhere from 6 to 12 months, and then you can get FDA approval to move into early clinical trials. And initially, you have what are called phase 1 trials, where the drug is given in different doses to people, typically for 30 days, and determine what's the maximum dose people can tolerate, and also make sure that there aren't any unexpected side effects. Once you've done that, then you can get FDA approval to go into a phase 2 trial where you treat a larger number of people with MS. Some would get placebo, some would get the drug. And we would be doing special testing to determine whether or not there was remyelination. And the phase 2 trials can take 2 to 3 years, depending on the design of the trial, numbers of patients, et cetera, that are enrolled. Once you've got that, and if there's a hint of evidence of efficacy, then you would proceed into a larger phase 3 trial to prove that it's effective as the step to getting approval from the FDA. And again, those trials can take 3-4 years. So we're looking at a number of years before there's an FDA-approved drug.
So by my calculations, it sounds like if all goes according to plan, the earliest this drug would be available is probably 2027, 2028.
Yes, no, that's a long ways off, but the whole point of this is to make sure that people are safe and that a drug is effective. And we've gone through some of this in very public forums with regards to the COVID-19 pandemic, where things have been claimed to be effective based on not good data. It turned out not only was the drug not effective, but it was causing serious side effects. So this process that I've described is a way of keeping people safe and making sure that a drug is effective before it gets released.
Dennis, as a follow-up question to that, Is this drug intended for all forms of MS?
We believe that this would be beneficial in all forms because demyelination, loss of remyelination, and failure to repair is part of the illness from the very beginning. So we think we would see this as being used in relapsing MS, but used along with one of the anti-inflammatory drugs that are currently available, and probably used in progressive MS, either in isolation or with some newer forms of therapy that are yet to be developed.
And Dennis, I understand that at this stage, it's the biotech company that's taking the lead on moving the drug through clinical trials. Does OHSU remain involved? If so, how?
Well, both Dr. Scanlon and I are serving in an advisory capacity to the biotechnology company. So they are drawing on our expertise in both the biochemistry in the case of Dr. Scanlon and in clinical trial design in my case. Plus, ultimately, OHSU would benefit if the drug were to come to market and be worth a lot of money. We actually have a mechanism for feeding some of the money that comes back to OHSU into the LAURA fund as a way to replenish that. But that's a number of years off, of course.
Maybe a number of years off, but it sounds like we wouldn't even be at this point if it weren't for philanthropy.
And without the philanthropic support of the Wyden family, we would not be looking at 2027, be looking at maybe never.
Laura, what was your first impression of Dennis as your neurologist?
Well, I had an appointment and he came in and did the, all the tests of what I could do and what I couldn't do, and then went on to tell me the medicine I needed to be on, and just a litany of lists of things that I had to do. And I told him that I was the CEO and the janitor and the secretary of my body, and that if he could solve this, he would. So if he would just partner alongside of me and I could use him to bounce stuff up on, that would be great. So we laughed. And we've been good friends ever since.
Dennis, have you ever had a patient before, Laura, that was that frank with you?
Not quite that frank, no. I've used the, without attributing it to Laura, I've used that story before in talking with doctors, and I've used that story before in talking with doctors about the care of people with MS and the concept of encouraging people to take control of their lives and being the CEO of their own health. So I thought that was a great comment and something I took to heart.
Laura, we have a question from a viewer. What can I do to be more supportive of my family member who was just diagnosed with MS?
Listen to them if they want to talk about it, or sometimes people don't. There's a lot of advice that people give that's good advice. I'd also just be their partner in it. If they need to start exercising and they don't really want to, be their partner to do that. If they need to start going to bed earlier, help them do that. Just be their liaison through it all.
That's right. Thank you, Laura.
Could I add something to that? What people with MS who are in the early stages, who don't have overt signs of MS, they often don't feel well, though. They have a lot of problems with fatigue, and they have other symptoms that aren't obvious. And they get, sometimes from their family or well-meaning friends, statements like, "Oh, you look so healthy, and why aren't you doing more?" And particularly if they're suffering from fatigue, which limits what they can do. Sometimes people don't believe that they're trying very hard. So you can also have the problem when there's no overt signs of MS, of people being not so sympathetic or saying hurtful things. So believe, if somebody with early MS tells you they don't feel good, believe them.
Thank you for that insight, Dennis. And Dennis, are there other ways our viewers in our community can continue to support OHSU's incredibly innovative MS research?
Well, yes, there are.
Tell us more.
Okay. um, well, we're always doing clinical research. That may entail testing new therapies, or it may entail studying new ways to look at and understand MS. And to do that research successfully, we need to have people with MS be willing to participate. So one way that people with MS can help is by seeing what sort of research we're doing, and if they've got meet the criteria for entering a research trial, volunteering for it, because we can't do research on MS without having people with MS participating. People who are interested in supporting this concept of the Laura Fund and investing in new ideas and high-risk research can also donate to that fund. And I believe that you'll be providing information about that. So philanthropy is also an important part of what sustains us and allows us to do first high-quality research and continue our research, along with funding that we receive from various granting agencies.
Dennis, can you highlight a few MS research projects happening at OHSU right now that can be supported by philanthropy?
Sure, there's two exciting areas that we're working on. One is Dr. Lindsay Wollescroft is going to be conducting a trial of aerobic exercise and determining whether it can stimulate remyelination. That is based upon animal research that shows that exercising mice or rats, which is very challenging to get exercise bikes that they'll ride on, but that if you exercise them, that will promote remyelination. So we're going to be doing a clinical trial where we'll exercise a group of people with MS, and another group will encourage them not to exercise. And then we'll do measurements to determine over a number of weeks whether there's evidence of improved electrical function as a sign of remyelination. I also mentioned that we believe that antioxidants are beneficial, potentially beneficial for particularly progressive MS. One of the projects that was supported in part by the Laura Fund was our development of lipoic acid, which is an antioxidant. And Dr. Rebecca Spain did a pilot trial which demonstrated that over 2 years, lipoic acid would slow down shrinkage of the brain dramatically compared with patients who were taking placebo. And she's now engaged in a larger trial of lipoic acid at 8 different sites in North America. And we'll have results on that in about 2 years. We're also interested in studying other antioxidants and using PET scan imaging, which can actually image the white blood cells that are causing havoc in progressive MS, and determining whether antioxidants like lipoic acid or other antioxidants can dampen down those angry white blood cells. And if so, that will lead us to investigating those treatments further.
Laura and Dennis, thank you so much for answering our viewers' questions and for sharing your stories, your work, and visions for the future. I am inspired by both of you. And thank you to all of you who are joining us today. Before we close, I invite you to please share your feedback on today's presentation. In the chat box, you will see a link to our quick 3-minute feedback survey. Additionally, if you would like to learn more about how you can support the OHSU Department of Neurology and the groundbreaking research we are doing, please share your name and contact information in the survey. And with that, this concludes our webinar. Thank you for participating and have a wonderful day.